was a one moment in time where my clairaudient gift turned on. I saw really horrific proof of what was going on in the relationship. The veil lifted. My egoic shell just got obliterated off of me. Dropping to your knees and crumbling to the ground, but simultaneously having the most enlightening, miraculous moment of your life. Wow. The duality at once.
Feel that. Oof.
It was a life changer, Cal. And now I'm a shaman. A lot of people in general are in these voided areas of feeling these old paradigms of the old way of how they were living life. It's becoming unbearable. And there's just no more denying that who you once were is just not who's trying to be embodied in you. I had more and more awakenings. Spirit was showing me, replaying my life, but without all the illusion and denial. The big step I took was my surrender. I'm finally ready to get out of my own way. I mean, when you do that, the guidance and answers come. I then heeded that guidance. That's vital step number 2. I mean, I guess you can just ignore them, but you're not going to get anywhere. Like, that's not going to do much. The medicine name downloaded in, rock star shaman.
Is it to take some of the gravity or being a shaman, it's almost like make it a little more playful, or?
It's that, but it's also representative of the 2 main places that I connect into: rock, Great Mother Earth, and star, Great Spirit.
Whoa! I had definitely not put that together.
Most people don't, and it's a part of the medicine. I know who I am, and I know the place from which I do this work. I'm really proud of how I have walked this path. It has absolutely not been easy. One of the tasks that I have been given is to help be a returner of shamanism back to what it really is, back to its original truths. I honor the human in me, and I'm not trying to say that I don't fumble at times. But what I choose in walking this path is to do it with the healthiest embodiment and integrity that I possibly can.
Is my dear friend, Alyson Charles. There's so much to cover today. I know we won't get to everything, but it was funny. You know the story, but a woman that does PR for you, Karina, is that how you pronounce her name?
Correct.
She reached out and with this beautiful email kind of introducing you and, Luke Story's wife, da-da-da-da. I was like, I have a little list I keep of people that when the time is right, I want to reach out and ask, just like totally tune into that.
Mm-hmm.
And she reached out and I'm like, oh, this is the perfect time. Like, you have your book coming out. It wasn't released yet, but it has since been released, and we're going to get into that for sure. But I was, it was,
It was funny how, the divine moved through her, because I had mentioned, before you reach out to podcast hosts, like, let me know who's on your list in case I already know them. And and she's doing an incredible job, but for some reason I didn't know she was reaching out to you. So then, when she told me, and she's like, he was so nice. He said, you guys are close friends and I'll see you at the hot springs on Friday. And so you guys can just sort it out from there. And so, And I was, as we chatted in those springs on that Friday, I was glad that she actually sent the email because, it is such an intriguing thing being a podcast host, especially in a community like ours here in Austin. And I don't think I would have ever asked you, like, how can I be on your podcast? I just would have probably waited for the invitation. And if it didn't come, would have trusted that. And so the way that somehow it all just came to be, it ended up being really beautiful. So thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. And I totally get that. I don't know that I've ever asked to have been on someone's because it is awkward. And plenty of people have reached out, whether cold calling or I would say anyone who's like really close to me hasn't. And people that are kind of on that outer ring have, and it just hasn't felt right.
Yeah, it's fascinating for me to observe all of that too, because as you now know, I have this background in radio and television. And then for many years, so many of my friends and Luke had launched their podcast. We're talking 6, 7, 8, whatever years ago. And throughout the course, many of them would say, why don't you do a podcast? Like you're a radio host, but it would just, I truly live by the divine calls, and I was not feeling a true call to have a podcast. Well, fast forward, a number of years, that call, I felt the first layer of it start to move in, and I sat with it for about a year, and then the call got louder and clearer. And then I said, okay, I am ready. So now it's like the name, the texture, the essence, the intention. I mean, there's so much medicine and alchemy and intentionality and energetics that go into having a podcast, especially the type that you and I and Luke and some of our other friends have. It's not an easy task. It's not an easy job. And so I'm so glad I answered the call. And Luke and I were in our previous house in LA in Laurel Canyon when the download for the name Ceremony Circle came in. And we just looked at each other and knew. And then I thought, okay, let me Google, see if the .com's available. And everything was there, Cal.
Yeah.
What are the chances of that? That's the world's oldest practice, like sitting in ceremony in a circle, like ceremonycircle.com available.
Yeah.
That's when I knew. I said, okay, this is mine. And here we go. But yes. And my point is too, then now that I said yes to that and have had it for the past year, yeah, the tuning in and the receiving of the clarity and the awareness of who should be next and the subject matter to cover with who, it's a real fine art. So it does take a lot of balancing and authentic expression when an invitation to come on your show comes in, and you can just tell, and you need to hold that line of what feels clear and divinely right. And so there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah. And I think that is such a, like, that is just life, I think, in a microcosm of just paying attention to that call and being patient. And I know that's something that has this, in particular, this project for me, this podcast has been a great exercise in me just following that and then having those boundaries of having to say no. I've had to say no a lot. And what I've finally come, my response is generally like, look, I just wait for the call, and my intuition tells me who the next guest is going to be, because it's something that is in my field, someone that I'm connected to, someone's story that I want to go deeper into. I'm really curious about that. And so that's been a great kind of practice for me.
Mm-hmm. I love that you wove patience in. That seems to be a theme coming into a lot of my conversations and interviews lately and even when I give my talks, I somehow got pulled into giving a lot of talks on psychedelics in the last couple of years, which that was a very intriguing door opening for me. But I speak a lot about that, the trusting in divine timing and the big picture. And if there's one thing that there's a few things that I genuinely feel I have become quite masterful at, and holding the divine line is one of them. And when you live from that place of those divine instructions and calls and the guidances that come in, and you start to learn how to co-create and be of this world and in the unseen worlds, and bringing all of it together into that oneness orb of divinity, that learning how to do that, it will drop you in and anchor you in into such a peace and a trust. And that's what helps you learn how to stay patient and trust the big picture and hold the line, because you're being moved from, and you're stepping from, and you're breathing from that place of divine instruction. And so that's been one of my saving graces for sure, is learning how to be embodied and live from that place.
I'd love to actually go deeper into that, because I think that is pretty much a lost art in our world today. And I know that as I've become more and more kind of attuned to what I need, I've really started to follow that, and it's become so much easier to know what my path is. And so I'd love, like, what are some things that, like, those, when you do have to put up those boundaries that have maybe been difficult in the past, but now you're able to come forward with integrity. And I know for me, it's, I don't want to let someone down. I don't want to hurt someone's feelings. I don't want someone to take this personally. And I've started to let go of that and understand that if I'm clear
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, as Don Miguel Ruiz would say, impeccable with my word, then if there's any tension, it's not mine.
Correct. Yeah. Gosh, yeah, there's so much. Yes, I don't know when my clarity and my ability to have such clear and strong discernment and boundaries came in. It was, obviously a byproduct of walking the path in the way that I have been instructed to and chosen to for a number of years, that I just recall all of a sudden, starting quite a few years ago, I just felt really adept at those skills. And it just really became quite easy because I felt so clear. And I'm just unwilling to budge out of that clarity. I am unwilling to do it. And I can feel the fire in me growing as I'm talking about this, because I know what life is like when you allow yourself.
That's the great reminder, right? For me, I look back, and when I'm going on what I think other people's wishes are and completely...
And getting out of integrity.
Yes, it is fucking brutal.
It's ugly, it's suffering, it's anguishing, it's tumultuous, arduous lessons that don't need to be as tumultuous and arduous. And yeah, it takes you into a way of living that's it's clamoring to get your attention, saying you're out of integrity, you're out of your divine alignment, you're out of your soul's calling, your earth mission. And that's why it feels so horrid when you're outside of that place. And so, yes, I mean, due to, and I thank God, Goddess, Great Spirit, Great Mother Earth, and the own willingness of my soul, I try to really speak that acknowledgement and give that place of reverence and honoring in every interview and every talk, because that guidance system, that navigation system, I feel really truly did save my life. And in my choosing to surrender to those places and live in devotion to those places every day to the best of my ability, I just have gotten so clear. And so, and I know the miracles that it has brought me and the places that it's taken my life, in terms of birthing Animal Power Book, in terms of Luke and I getting together, in terms of us hearing the call to move here. And I'd never even been to Austin, and instantly, being invited into your home and other people's homes, and the places that my life has gone through, holding the line and trusting and keeping that discernment with that clarity. I will not go against it. As uncomfortable as those conversations might be, because it has brought, there have been really difficult times in terms of relationships, that I foresaw having for the rest of my life, this lifetime, but, certain things happening. And while it brought so much pain and so many initiations, and I went through some of the most uncomfortable energetics of my whole life at the tail end of 2021. But I knew, I know enough the alchemy of things, right? And I'm like, okay, there's a lot of work for me in here, and there's a lot for me to unravel. And when I would peer into the teachings and lessons, what is mine? What is theirs? What's my responsibility? What's not? What are the lessons? When I would go in, it was like a spider web with just infinite things to look into. But I went in there, and I stay in there, and I trust myself to do the work. And I thought, as much as the seemingly easy route would be to just get back into this relationship containers, try to smooth things over the best you can, I knew I needed to stay in this wild discomfort and do all of the medicine teachings and learnings I needed to, And I knew there was something miraculous on the other side. And where, my relationship with a couple of these people might go, I have no idea, but I know that that container had to be done and released with honor and set aside to allow a whole new shape to be born, not just for myself, but for the other people involved too. And those are not easy waters, but when you just feel at the depths of your soul, or you feel that clear divine alignment in terms of what you know you need to do, you do it. And there's always something majestic. I popped out of that tail end of last year, and I can now honestly say I am filled with more incredibly deep gratitude than ever before in my life, more happiness than ever before in my life. I'm more authentically me than ever before in my life. And it's a culmination of a lot of things, but I know going through those initiations helped pop me into the place that I am now. So you just have to trust.
Yeah. And so tell me this, does it look like maybe some people that were in your, let's call it your inner circle, are no longer there, and in kind of cleaning that up? Is that, that's what I'm receiving here.
Yes. But. Yeah. Really close friends that, had been some of the closest for a very, very long time. And I still love them so much, but there was something going on in that container, that I think none of us were fully aware of until, there was a bit of a relationship implosion and explosion that happened that really rocked all of us, I think, in different ways. But there's so much grief, so much heartbreak, so much sadness, anger. It took me so many places, disappointment, rage. I did a number of fire, releasing ceremonies to honor, the emotions that were coming up, to go into them fully and to speak to them fully. But, it doesn't do anyone good to sit in rage beyond the necessary capacity. But yes, it dealt with two very close friends, and the unexpectedness of the disillusion of the relationship, that was really hard too, because it was just out of nowhere, the relationship changed course. So yeah, I went from having people that, a couple of people that I talk to pretty much every day to, now there's not much, if any, communication at all. And I still feel, even when I just said that part of it, I felt some swirls go up through my heart of, some emotion and sadness, because it's loss. When you lose some friends in that way, I moved through a lot of grief at that. And that was probably the biggest theme in the tail end of that year. It was part of the many nonstop and with successive and simultaneous initiations all happening at once the last 3-4 months. It was really challenging. And grief was probably the main theme of it all. Even the Artist for Animal Power book dying. That was, again, a completely unexpected piece of information to receive. And he and I, and our, honoring our soul agreement and contract to come together to birth Animal Power book. There's a whole story behind, selecting him and just the power that he gave to make sure that each of the 100 animals had the embodiment of their teachings. It was a whole journey. And so, him passing away, and then my dear Grammy Bernice, who was so close to my whole life. She lived a wonderful life. She almost got to 100, but she passed away. And there was just so many different shapes and forms of death and birth and grief. And it was so intense and so many layers to all of it. I was navigating so much all at one time. It was hard. There were some times I went to Luke and I said, I knew I would be okay. But I definitely let him know I'm off. I'm my mental health feels askew from the norm. And there was another initiation unexpectedly. He and I were in the bedroom one day, and I don't know how familiar you are with Kali, goddess Kali, the, fiery
A little bit, yeah.
Kali. She's not one of the main goddesses that I've worked with this lifetime. I've mainly worked with goddess Isis and some others, but when Kali comes in, there is no mistaking it. And yeah, I mean, some people are like, when these things happen to you, are you like in another country or in a ceremony or in a teepee? I'm like, no, the vast majority of my shamanic initiations happen in the living room at home, or, back when I used to live alone in a tiny little studio in Brooklyn, that cave of a place was really potent. But anyways, this Kali initiation came in. And it took me, and it could be potentially hard for some listeners to hear. So that's the only reason I hesitate being fully honest on the visions that came in. But I will just say they were incredibly graphic and represented graphic, extreme death. And the vision was the same, but it came in like 3 or 4 times in a row. And I knew that I wasn't going to do anything to harm myself. I was aware there was a shamanic initiation happening, and I was aware that it was of Kali, the fire of her coming in, the fire of change, the fire of death and rebirth. So I was feeling what I was feeling. And yes, it was scary. And I was seeing the visions I was seeing. And yes, it was scary. But then there was this whole other aspect of myself that had the conscious awareness of what was going on. So again, like these are the kinds of conversations that I'm having with myself and having with Luke, like, hey, you don't need to be alarmed. I'm not going to do anything to myself, but I want you to be aware that I just had this initiation and involved this type of graphic vision. So that's just a little, I don't know how I got us pulling over there, but
I love it.
That happened at the last end of the last year.
And is that like you're laying in bed, you're asleep, it's dream, like what?
Well, you know what it is? It's actually taking me back to the beginning thread of this whole conversation of when you do anything that's out of alignment. Now, when I do anything that's a touch askew out of what I know I should and need to be doing, the communication that I'm askew, it's not mild and it's not like slow burn. It's like, boom, you're out. So what was happening was, haven't talked about it too much, but I feel good in doing it and just honoring it and wrapping it in sacred space as I speak about it. But Luke and I are getting to a place of readiness to hopefully start our own family. And the way he and I, we have a lot of similarities, Luke and I, but then there are also a lot of ways that we do things very, very different. And in this situation, there's a dear sister of ours who, if I were to have a fertility or birthing guide or priestess that I would work with, it would be her. And she had gifted us her beautiful course. And it's an incredible course. And I recommend it to people. But the way that I need to walk this path of hopefully getting pregnant and birthing a healthy child for the first time, I need to adhere, at least right now, to strictly what my body intelligence is telling me and what God Goddess is telling me. And I'm not to go outside of that. But in this night, I wanted to be open-minded. And the way Luke likes to approach things is with education and listening and digestion. And he listens to tons of podcasts. And I never listen to podcasts. We just work it different. And so I said, okay, let me lean into one of these modules. And as soon as the video started playing, everything in me and Kali came in. And it was this loud, clear vision of this is not how you're to walk this pregnancy path. You're not in, and it comes in that fiery and loud and clear. So I did something for a couple of moments that went against what I already knew myself and had already told him. It's just my body intelligence and God Goddess for this path for me right now. And I went against that for a couple of minutes and I got clamored for it.
Look at that. We already came full circle.
Yeah, here. Okay, well, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being with us. You guys have a great day. We're out.
Yes. Oh, goodness. I do want to mention before, because I don't want to forget to share this, but and you had mentioned, plant medicine ceremonies, and you've kind of spoken on that in the last couple of years, but the ceremony that some of us were a part of recently was such a profound experience for me. And honestly, it had so much to do with you.
Aw.
And I don't know if I'd ever been bathed in so much love and just this maternal safety. And yeah, whew. I've thought often about you in that experience and just how grateful I am for you being there, and just your heart. Like, I just felt it.
Mm,
And yeah, it just was really important for me to share that, and
mm,
just thank you for being there and being there for me.
mm. Thank you, Cal.
Mm,
I love you so much.
mm,
I really do. And it's really supportive sometimes for me to hear things like that. And so thank you for saying it and sharing it. And also the fact that you specifically said, that mothering piece. I'm learning more and more, even though I haven't yet birthed a physical child into this earth plane, I'm understanding at an exponential rate, especially in the last few months, that the mother in me, the mother archetype in me, is one of, if not perhaps the strongest of the energetic encodings that I have. And so thank you, even just the way that you explained that space that I held. And Luke has offered some similar sentiments. The first time I was on his podcast many years ago, he had a really big heart opening. And it was the first time ever on his show that he himself started to get emotional and cry. And so yes, it's helpful for me to hear, especially from men. It's so healing because I have a pretty traumatic, wounded backstory, just with men in my life. And so it's so healing for me to be at a place in my life now where I have, Luke as my husband and you as a dear friend, and you guys are just pure gold hearted, just incredible beings who are willing to be humble and willing to be forever students and learn. And the fact that I can sit with you and be with you and you can receive who I am and you see me fully. You see my soul and you feel my soul in my heart. It's not just the external. It's so healing for me. So thank you for saying that. And like that night was just, how epic.
so epic.
Just so it was all the things, it was just the full range of the emotional spectrum. But yet somehow, even in going into all the nooks and crannies of the spectrum, it was always fun somehow, even when there were some, more emotional things coming up. And yeah, I won't, share too much, but yes, I just remember I somehow ended up behind you that night when you were in your little cocoon. That was just that sight alone of just where you landed during that night and just how you landed. It was such a sight. And yeah, I ended up behind there and I could feel you, whatever you were doing as you were cocooning, I could feel it. And it was truly spirit who moved through me. And I remember saying that to you that night or the next day. It was of other than me that, reached my hand to put it on your heart and to say the things that moved through. It was spirit wanting to remind you and wanting to get in as deeply as it could for you to connect with that truth and remembrance within your own self and to allow the unlocking, to continue. Those we both know when you sit and have a night like that, the medicine of that night forever works with us.
Yeah, it does. It does. Then that's so beautifully stated. And that's what I remember when I think back on that night. It's just that it's almost like the cosmic surgery that you were performing that just allowed me to get, more in touch with. And that was my intention going in, like to connect to that heart. And yeah, you really, help facilitate such a beautiful experience. And I think it's a great reminder for people who have either been through plant medicine experiences or thinking about it. They don't have to be these big blast off, what the fuck is going on experiences. There's so much medicine in doing it in I don't know, just such an intentional and beautiful, and yeah, I think everyone in that night just had a similar experience of, wow, this is kind of cool and fun. And yeah, there's some work to be done, but it doesn't have to be so fucking challenging.
Yes. Yeah. There's so much potency in the subtle realms. And I love being in there. That's another area where I've gained quite a bit of mastery, is allowing myself to live in that place, and where I go in and do my examinations of things and lessons, that things that I need to see, and also with others. And also it's taking me a little bit to some of my sacred times with peyote. And of course, everyone has their unique experience with it, but peyote and I have a real ancient dynamic and rapport, and I love its workings, and it works, in my opinion, in more of those subtle planes and realms. And that's the medicine. And I really trust Luke would be fine with me sharing this, because he has before. Otherwise I would never say it, but that's a medicine he really struggles with. And it's really challenging for him, because, he prefers more of the shabami powwow light bulb moments of awareness, and knows exactly what's going on, like what alchemical change is happening and how. And like peyote goes into those subtle, intricate threads, and like does its work and does its weaving in such a subtle but wildly profound and potent way. And those were some, even though we weren't sitting with that particular medicine the night we're talking about, the whole container felt more of that essence to me, in terms of the subtle body and the subtle energetics and the refined, intricate places that we were all able to go for such big change.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, like you said, the big clamor over the head. It doesn't have to.
And I feel like I've definitely been called in the last 3 or 4 ceremonies into those kind of lighter realms, and just walk away feeling full and restored, and not trying to pick up the pieces of what just happened.
Yeah. And one little thing that's just coming in as you were saying that, let me see if I can find the words. The visions come in, and then I have to try to put human words to it. But it was taking me, is this okay? Can I share something?
You share everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to be sure. So one thing I remember that was coming in, and I don't know how much it resonated then or resonates now, was a bit of an alchemy happening and within you, of trusting that in you connecting more fully, or all the way fully, with your true pure gold heart, doesn't mean that business cowl and like ambitious, attaining powerhouse cowl goes away, and trusting, in fact, in working with a different type of energetic, and trusting in a different type of embodiment, even though it's heart rooted and heart based, it can actually open you up into an even grander type of power than what you knew before, as the attainer, like, top, just go to the top and get it at the top all the time, Cal. And for some reason, the type of energetic of the ceremony took me to that, because again, it was you trusting. You're like, in the last few ceremonies, I've been working with the energetics differently. And I think it's all a part of this whole thing that you have been doing for a while now, of walking this new way, this new path, and all these different types of portals, the smaller overnight sacred ceremony container portals, and then like the bigger, like your life and relationships within your life. You're really reorienting yourself and trusting to be and live in a totally different way. And I see that, and I don't know if any of that is true, but I see that and just want to honor that in you, because it takes a lot of courage, because you've attained a lot doing it the way that you did. But there's that deeper part in you that knew you needed to pivot.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because recently, that we just got back from Peyton and I and our daughter and her friend from 4 or 5 days on spring break.
Mexico.
Yes. And I slept a lot. I took naps. I didn't really do anything. And it was like, I was like a day and a half in. I was like, oh, I need to tap into this. I've been going still. I'm still going and waking up in the morning and hitting the ground running. And I'm tired. And I'm using different things to boost my energy, whether it's feel free or microdosing, whatever it is. There's just to kind of get me going, and then I'm good. But it's like, no, I'm not good. I actually need to rest. And this is something that our friend Boyd Vardy has talked to me a few different times. He's like, brother, you need to build your chi. You need to rest. What if you just don't do anything? And I got that message big time this past week. And so I'm trying to honor that this week, where I cleared the schedule of a few things and just trying to rest when I'm tired and sit here and watch the March Madness basketball with my sons and just not do anything, go to bed early.
And it is the great unlearning.
Yes.
I mean, you're now becoming a true testament. Not that you weren't before, but in a really profound way, you're becoming a living testament of your own brand, your own show, your own teachings. You manifested all of this for yourself.
Of course, right?
Yes.
Yes.
You're like, I'm going to call my show and brand, unlearn, the great unlearn. And then it's like, okay, well, if you're going to be the master at this and be a true leader, mountain lion, power animal energy for your own brand and show, we're going to need you to walk the talk and be in true embodiment of that. And it is course correcting you in so many different ways. And the last thing I'll say, I think I said that a while ago, but is, I love where you're at and how it's working. And I've been in these zones countless times in my life. And I think if we need to give ourselves the grace and permission to let it have its own dance and time. These awarenesses of what we need to shift and change. Again, the last thing we need to do is put pressure on ourselves that you've got to have it figured out and that pivot has to be made by Tuesday. It's like, we're these light beings connected to all these infinite energetics. And when we get these awarenesses of what needs to change within ourselves internally and then externally in our lives, it's a true alchemical dance. It's a weaving. And there will be times where you're really pretty dialed into this new energetic. And then there will be a day where you see that you kind of slip back. But it just, as long as you trust, and I know you do, and I do, and you too, that it's just the conscious awareness, that holding the conscious awareness of where you are going overall, and then giving yourself the grace of the dance, of the weave, of getting there.
Yes.
I mean, I guess that's life in general, but
no, but I think that's missed by a lot of us. And I know that for me, it has been having the awareness and then not beating myself up about
Yes.
oh, you're just doing the thing again. Okay. How can we shift this so you can be on the path that feels, more aligned with where I want to walk? And yeah, just again, this is just like the spring break was a reminder, this part of this conversation is another reminder. Yeah, you're doing the right thing. Just trust that rest is important. And the more I rest, the more present I can be and the more I can connect to the heart versus all the external things that I'm creating and working with and doing, which are kind of pulling me away from that. And so it's getting into that balance with that has been, I guess, the part of the journey that I'm kind of on lately.
Yeah. It's a lot to unlearn, and it's letting your cells, it's these massive shifts that require some of the deepest courage possible. It's going into the marrow in our bones. It's going into our bloodstream. It's going into our cellular DNA. It's going into our energetic light bodies. It's going into our chakras. It's going into our auric field. I mean, there's a whole lot that's going on as we courageously devote and commit to completely changing our life in a lot of different categories at one time. So anywho, I see you, I honor you, and it's been really beautiful to witness.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about, I do want to, in listening to your solo cast, which was amazing.
It was my first one. Thanks.
I know, I couldn't believe that. Like, this is the first time you've done it. It was great. Anyone, we'll link to it in the show notes, but it's awesome. But I learned a lot about you. I didn't realize that you were big in athletics growing up, and then you got into radio host and media, and just, can you just land for everybody? Because it's not necessarily how you identify today, but it's an important part of your journey.
Yes. Yeah, it is. I think it is healthy and fun to track back a little bit. And I also feel, and I'm happy about what I'm about to say, I think it makes me a bit more relatable. Yes, I'm a shaman, but I'm also still, I'm still just as human. And I love the quirky, goofy, fumbly human in me as much as I love the shaman in me. But yeah, when I let people know that I grew up in this tiny little town in Indiana called Syracuse, I had one stoplight when I was growing up. I think now maybe it has 3. But I grew up in a very small town, and my dad, who I love very much, big teacher for me, and a lot of teachings came from some childhood wounding, but I love him, and he's got a really beautiful heart and soul. But he became my distance running coach before I was even 3 years old. And so that started some of these pieces that I really had to do a lot of work around when I got into my adulthood. But yeah, I was in my first running road race at like 2.5 years old. There's pictures of it, actually. I have my little, I think they were, I can't remember if it was, I think it was a pink Nike sweatsuit and little blue Nike shoes with a yellow swoosh. I remember. And so, yeah, he ended up being my coach for a long time. I won a couple of national championships as a distance runner, and I got a scholarship to run at the University of Alabama, where I was an athlete for 5 years. And then, after Alabama, I was a Division I college coach, believe it or not, for a while. It's so funny when I say some of these things, because it truly does feel of not this lifetime. When I see, if on occasion, back when I lived in New York City for about 13, 14 years, some of the road races or marathons that would weave, when I see runners now, like, it evokes this like really strange feeling in me. I don't want to say it's PTSD, but it just feels so foreign. And I can hardly picture myself as that, with the number pinned to your shirt and just people barreling down the road. I'm like, oh my God, that was me from like 2.5 through 23. So anyways, yes, hardcore, intensive athletic background. And it was when I was an advanced certified personal trainer at a gym in Florida. One of my clients one day came in and said, "You should be my radio show co-host." And so even though I had visions, I told you when I was a little girl, I always saw myself in media, on mics and cameras, but I thought maybe a sports broadcaster. That was not the case. I was a AM talk show co-host in Florida, and then I got hired to be the morning show co-host at a hip hop station for many years, and that was an adventure. It came at the right time in life, though. I was still young. I had to get up at 3 a.m.
Oh shit!
The morning show is legit the morning show. And, I was also writing the hip hop and Hollywood news headlines. So I was getting up at 3, going to the studio and doing research on like what the latest news headlines were in the industry and writing those up. And also, we would typically have, different rappers or hip hop artists on, or I actually, even though this is very far pre-Awakening, I would bring psychics in and I would do dream analysis for the listeners who would call in. So I was weaving in. So even though I was in all these other worlds and I hadn't had my spiritual awakening yet, that real innate part in me always gravitated toward the world of metaphysics and spirituality.
Wow. How long did you do the morning show for?
I think that was like 3 or 4 years.
And then how long were you on the air, like during each day?
Each day I was on Monday through Friday for many hours every morning. God, it's so long ago. I think we were on from 5:45 or 6 in the morning until I think till 10. I mean, it was a long morning show. It was exhaustive. In fact, you're reminding me. So at this time, while I was doing the morning show, I was also the Division I college coach. So I would leave the studio and then go coach Division I athletes. And I almost had a breakdown at that point. I remember one day when I was driving home, I almost drove myself to the hospital instead. I was just fried. My circuitry was just fried in all capacities, pushing way too hard. So yeah, I almost had a breakdown at that point. And those were some of the signs that were coming in that eventually did pluck me out of radio. That's when I moved to New York City, and that's when I started working in television. I was working in production for a lot of major networks and also for nationally syndicated talk shows Wow, those were not healthy environments. I will just say that. Could have stories for days in that world. And while I was working in production, I was auditioning because I'm a host, you know.
You are such a host. I'm like, you totally, yes, you on a set.
Yes.
Beautiful, the energy, the smile, yeah.
It's so encoded in me. You know, it really is a natural gift. I'm not, it just is. I'm just going to own it and claim it. I'm so at home on set, and all the media I did, the radio and the television talk show that I ended up hosting, it was all live. So I got very strong at when the lights went on and that door opened, just going with it and being real. And I actually love live media more than anything. So yeah, I did all of those things. And it was around the TV talk show hosting time that I had my awakening and my divine intervention via a previous very unhealthy, dysfunctional, long-term relationship. And there is a whole story with that. But yeah, my time happened. It was a one moment in time in a one day where my clairaudient gift turned on. I received information, and answering that information I was given, I saw really horrific proof of what was going on in the relationship. And in seeing that proof, the veil lifted that had been so tightly pulled down over my third eye and my truth and my egoic shell. I could feel it energetically. My egoic shell just got obliterated off of me. And it's the classic story of, dropping to your knees and crumbling to the ground, but simultaneously having the most enlightening, miraculous moment of your life, like the both.
Wow.
The duality at
I can
once.
Feel that. Oof.
It was a life changer, Cal. And now I'm a shaman. Yeah. Go figure, anything's possible, kids. Yeah. You truly never know.
So this happens. How soon after did you kind of pivot out of, media and start doing some different work?
Yeah, that was an intriguing time that really is of service to share about because a lot of people in general, not just probably listeners of our shows, but just in general in life nowadays are in these voided areas of feeling these old paradigms of the old way of how they were living life. It's becoming unbearable, and there's just no more denying that who you once were is just not who's trying to be embodied in you and who's trying to be born. And when you're in that voided zone, it can be really terrifying. And so, yes, there was a lot going on at that time and tons of breakdowns to break through, tons of, oh my God, massive initiations and rites of passages guiding me home to the truth of the shaman that was always living inside of me, but just laying dormant until this time. It's making me burp. Excuse me. It's like, it brings up a lot when I go.
Literally, that's so good.
Literally. Yeah. So, okay, to condense it down and to make it clear and perhaps have some tips in there. So I was being given vision. So, okay, big step number one, after I had my awakening and whole life got turned upside down, I started to see the truth of me, the truth of my ex, the truth of earth life. And I flew back to Indiana to stay at my grandmother's house. And I had additional awakenings. I stayed in the back bedroom. And over the couple of weeks, I had more and more awakenings sent to me. And Spirit was showing me, replaying my life, but without all the illusion and denial. So it's taking me back to all of these experiences, but I was seeing them in truth. So it's just awakening after awakening after awakening. And from there, I realized I needed a lot of help and I was not who I thought I was. And the big step I took was my surrender and speaking to my own soul, speaking to Great Spirit and Great Mother Earth. Okay, I'm finally ready to get out of my own way. I'm finally ready. I didn't say it in this way at the time. The getting out of my own way, I think I did, but it was, I'm finally ready to get out of this like mind-based, ego-based way of living how my mind and ego thinks I should live and start to get enraptured with all this help that's always there that I just was suppressing and denying. And I was also suppressing and denying my own spiritual power and gifts. So in finally speaking this surrender statement, I mean, when you do that, the guidance and answers come. They absolutely do. And so I then heeded that guidance. That's vital step number 2. If you're going to surrender and ask for the instructions to come in, I mean, I guess you can just ignore them, but you're not going to get anywhere. Like that's not going to do much. So I heeded what was coming in. They started guiding me to different shamans, my aunt being one of them. In that soul retrieval session with her, that's when my main core power animal, the black jaguar, came in. After that soul retrieval session, 3 supporter power animal allies, the bear, the deer, and frog came in. So those 4 were my main 4 spiritual guides that helped me in this most disorienting time, discombobulating time. And they all gave me different medicine, different teachings, which I can get into in more detail at some point if we want. But so this is happening. I'm also being shown visions. Well, so I devote now. Whatever Spirit's telling me to go to heal, I'm on it and I'm doing it because I realize I have a lot of work to do. And after doing this for quite some time, I don't know exact numbers, but I want to say maybe a year and a half-ish, my soul had healed enough and it was in a place of readiness enough for the truth of my shamanic calling, the shaman in me, to start to express and activate and talk to me more. And as that was coming more online and on board and on grid within me, then I started being shown visions of how my truth as a shaman and being a shaman out there, we're all, every single one of us are different. There's no 2 shamans alike. And there are a lot of shamanic colleagues I have who are more in the caves and more tucked back in the cut, and people go to them one-on-one and you would never know that they're shamans. That's not how I am to walk this path. I am to be very much out and sharing and helping people remember, these wisdoms. So I started being shown this. And that's where the medicine name Rockstar Shaman came in. I was at lunch with 3 other friends. I was having a breakdown. I was crying because I was being told what I needed to do, but terrified in doing it. And also it's like, okay, I'm being shown these huge visions of me on stage in front of thousands of people, healing people and guiding these journeys for like 10,000 people. But what's the next step? Like, that just doesn't happen overnight. And so I was crying with my friends at this, it's called Peace Food Cafe in Manhattan, really breaking down. And in that conversation, the medicine name downloaded in Rockstar Shaman. And so that became, and there was a whole journey, and that medicine name continues to be a teacher. I mean,
is it to take some of the I don't know, the gravity or the being a shaman? It's almost like make it a little more playful, or
it's that, but it's also representative of the 2 main places that I connect into: Rock, Great Mother Earth, and Star, Great Spirit.
Whoa. Oh my God. I had definitely not put that together.
Most people don't. And it's a part of the medicine for when the moment happens that you can, it's been a whole journey saying yes to that name.
I can imagine. And it's, I'll share a story for me is, we were at a dinner with a few other couples, I don't know, 3 months ago. I think it was in December. And you and Luke came up. I brought you guys up. I forget what the context was, but as you can imagine, just lovingly. And one of the women who I love, and she's super sweet, made kind of a little chuckle or something. And it was based on Rockstar Shaman.
Yes.
I was like, look, I don't know the story of any of that, but I will say this, she's one of the most amazing women I've ever met. And so whatever you think, you don't know her. And so just open yourself up to whatever. But I can imagine you get a fair amount of grief for that.
I have encountered a lot throughout the years. And, you know, I've definitely gotten so much stronger. I mean, I so clearly know who I am. I so clearly know my heart. I so clearly am aligned with my divine mission and with divine pure energies. And I know that, but there's still that human part in me that even when I hear that story, like had you told me that 5, 6, 7 years ago, I probably would be crying. It probably would have felt like a dagger to my gut. You know, it used to very viscerally affect me because I'm still human and I still, knowing my good heart and knowing I'm a really wonderful person, it still pains me to know that there are people who have never, I guarantee this woman's never met me.
Never met you. She has not. She said that. I don't know her.
There you go. And every single time that I hear stories like this, it's someone who's never even met me, who has these triggers and these judgments that come up. And so, yes, there's still a little part of me that's like, oh, well, that's a little bit of a shame. Like that's a little hurtful, but I trust in the medicine of it. And as a medicine woman, I know that I'm not here to be easily digested by everybody. My medicine is powerful and it's potent and it's freaking bold and it's brilliant and at times it's masterful and at times it's human, but it's strong. It's strong medicine. And so yes, to answer your question, throughout the decade plus or however long since I've been given that name, I have received the full scope of people's reactions. And it tends to be two categories: people that hear it and they're like, fuck yeah, like who's this woman? Like, they feel the potency and there's something in them that wants to lean in or learn more, or they feel the texture and it resonates. Or it's the other side. It's the people that, scrunch their nose up and have snide remarks who have never met me, and they snicker and they want to be condescending and try to downplay my medicine and downgrade the potency. And I've had people come back to me who have been honest with me and said, when I first heard your name, I had a reaction. I was triggered. But the people that do the work and are aware of triggers and know that there's a medicine and a trigger and they go into it, I've had a lot of people come back to me and say, I was triggered when I first heard it, but when I investigated the trigger, I realized you were shining a light on the place in me that's playing too fucking small and not owning my divine truth and not owning my divine power. And that's the spot it was hitting in me. And that's why I was angry at you and annoyed by you, because you're fucking owning your divine power.
Owning it. Wow.
So I'm glad that we went into this, and it's just, I've been doing this for long enough and I do enough it gets me a bit emotional. Like I do enough to help this whole world, planet Earth. I do this work with such honor and integrity, and the things that I do every day that no one knows about that are of service for every living being on this planet, for both the seen world, this waking, walking world, and the unseen world. Like I live in devotion and hold incredibly exhaustive at times, strong space to be of service in these ways. And yeah, I don't know. I just want to honor that about myself. Like I know who I am, and I know the place from which I do this work from, and I know the place from which I live from. And I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of how I have walked this path. It has absolutely not been easy. There have been countless initiations that I don't know. I don't know a lot of other people who honestly could have held the line and kept going the way that I have. But I do, because God Goddess tells me to. And so for whoever that woman is, send love to your heart, and perhaps we'll meet one day.
I'm sure you will. Thank you for sharing that. And I feel that, and I feel like your power and your heart, and so grateful for the work you're doing. And, you've had a lot of initiations lately. One of them is this book.
Yes. The book.
And so I'd love to just dive into that. It's interesting, as you were sharing on your solo cast, as you were tuning into the book and opening up to different parts, there were two that stood out for me that I needed to hear. It was interesting, the story of the Leech.
Oh, it's one of my favorites.
Well, I've been feeling my liver needs a detox, like feeling it profoundly. And I'm just like trying to sort out like what's the way to do this. I reached out to Dr. John Lawrence. I was like, dude, do you have some sort of liver detox? He's got something, but I'm super curious about this actual process of working with leeches. Because I think you and I are very similar in the sense of like, that sounds kind of terrifying, but I'm willing to give it a shot.
There's clearly something that's resonating within you.
Yes.
It was so powerful. So the instruction and guidance came in. This was when I was in that voided zone of TV hosting world dying off, former life, former relationship, all the things dying off, heeding the surrendered calls of divine. And somehow, I don't remember exactly how, but I got pinged into this world-renowned Austrian leech therapist. I forget his name, but it lives.
Did you literally go to Austria?
No, he lived in Brooklyn. He came from Austria.
If I can make that happen, but fuck.
No, he was trained. He's born and raised, lived in Austria, was trained in leech therapy in Austria, and then came and brought his services to Brooklyn. And I found out about him, and I think similar to what's happening in you, when I heard about it, there was just this something inside of me that just pinged on, that lit up, that resonated. And I was like, oh gosh, because you know how when the divine instructions come in and it's something that you know you need to heed, but there's that other part of you that's like, oh no, I really don't want to lean into that.
Dude, it happened with me with Boyd in listening to him being on a podcast a friend had sent me. And I'm going to just think about everything that came out of me answering that call. But the host had been on one of Boyd's Track Your Life retreats. And he talked about one night they stay out on the land, no cover, no nothing. Just one of the men stays up and watches the fire for an hour and a half, 2 hours, wakes up the next guy. And the idea is you have to keep the fire going. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, like, you put everybody at risk. Ooh. And in this experience, the host, Patrick O'Shaughnessy, talked about a hyena that came into the, where they were sleeping. And he had to kind of like sort out what to do. And if it got really harrowing, he had to wake up, Boyd or one of the other guides, but he didn't have to. But I thought, like, that sounds terrifying to me. And I feel like I need to go do it to show that I can handle it. I can do it. And because I went there, I mean, that Boyd, the relationship that I've, he and I have developed, but everybody here in Austin that's been able to share in his medicine. I mean, talk about a shaman.
Yeah.
Holy shit. So anyway, I answered that call, but I'd love to hear more about your leech experience.
Yes. Yeah. So the call came in, the ping got pinged, and I knew it was something I needed to do, but I had never seen a leech before. I had certainly never interacted with them. And, just like so many things in life, we get so kind of conditioned and brainwashed through media and movies, whether it's what a shaman looks like or what shamanism is or what leeches are like. I mean, it runs the gamut. Media there's some good sides. We're both in it and it's done a lot for me, but there's also some huge downsides to media as well. And I just had this vision in my mind that they were just super creepy and scary and so, I went in with a lot of hesitation. I did document it. So me getting this first session, I did more than the first one, but this one does live on YouTube somewhere. And
we'll see if we can find it to put it in the show notes.
I haven't watched it in probably probably like a decade, but I would actually like to watch it again. It was quite a fun episode. I arrived to the Leech therapist's office and, oh gosh, I get so emotional, as you heard in that solo cast I did when I was using Animal Power Book as a divination tool to guide that solo cast. And the first page I opened to when I asked it to guide me on the podcast journey, it was to my leech story. And I just started crying because I have such reverence for them because, so I laid down and he explains to me what the protocol is and the process. And he gets, he opened the refrigerator and showed me, just like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of leeches just in jars, just leeches everywhere. So that was my first transmission when he opened up the refrigerator door and I just saw them all alive and living in there and just swirling around. I was like, okay. And in a few moments, these will be attached to me and okay, I can do this. And so I got into position and laid down and there was a lot of like Lamaze type breathing going on. I was really trying to prepare myself. And the other intriguing thing is, have you ever seen one in their mouths? Like they have these circular mouths with hundreds and hundreds of little tiny teeth. It's like a valve type suction mouth that are surrounded in hundreds of teeth. And so he was explaining to me that you'll feel the mouth latch on with all of their hundreds of teeth. But then, being the loving, beautiful creatures they are, they secrete their own painkiller, pain medicine before they then start to go into phase like 2 or 3 of like secrete. They have like 140 different healing enzymes that they start to put into you while simultaneously extracting the lymph that needs to be extracted. So you can get leech therapy on different parts of your body. But yes, my first time that I got it, I think there were 5 or 6 placed right above my liver for a liver detoxification and healing. And when they latch on, I know that they've got that painkiller, but I wasn't really. I have a very high pain threshold, AKA the 6th or 7th kidney stone I passed a few mornings ago.
Shit.
Yeah. So I understand how to work with pain, but like you feel when the leech attaches. I will just say that. But there was something just so profound that started to happen when the leech attached and then he and I, were connected and bonded in this way. Like we became one organism, in some ways because he's attached to me and I'm attached to him. And there was just something so powerful that started to happen in that moment. And then when I started to witness, I got brave enough to, once they started to get attached to like, at first I couldn't look.
No, right. It's like getting a shot or something.
Yeah. But then when I started to understand them more through feeling them laying on my belly and feeling their maneuverings and the bonding started to get deeper, I felt ready to look. And so I started to watch how they would work. And that's where I just started to have my heart just so blasted open. I could feel their generosity. And it was, that's why the story lives in the book, because it's a classic, powerful story of pure alchemy, of that major shift of fear and terror in a matter of seconds, all the way over to the other end of the spectrum of unconditional love and reverence and sacredness. And these little creatures did that for me. And so having then that encoding of that alchemical power that never leaves you. So the teachings and the medicine of the alchemy that the leeches taught me in that first healing session, I'm then able to use it in any situation I'm in life. It can always go back, whether just energetically or really thoughtfully and consciously, in whatever way I need, to the alchemical teachings of Leech, of learning how to shift from fear to love and reverence. So I love them so much. I went back again, had it done on my knee. I mean, I would do it again if there was somebody that we knew of here that's really great at it and does it in a really respectful way. Like, I would do it again in a heartbeat. I recommend it to anyone where it's resonating. It's a beautiful, powerful experience. So yeah, let's do some research.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely do some research on that. The other one that really landed for me, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, but the idea of the whale and how sometimes the whale has to go beneath the surface and rest. I was like, oh boy, I needed to hear that.
Yeah, the whale has, oh gosh, yeah, it's some of the, it's tough sometimes to put words. I'm trying to find a word for its texture of its essence and its medicine. It's the word abyss comes in, the whale, it really presented a lot actually in that tail end of 2021. There was a lot of whale medicine in there in terms of another thing that it represents. I mean, think of these massive, I know for me, even when I just see a video of a massive whale, it's almost like, it's almost terrifying because it's so huge and you can just feel the power of it. And then this massive being just goes down into those darkest, scariest ocean waters where you never know what you're going to find down there. And whale was coming in, not just for myself, but for the collective. A lot at the end of 2021 of guiding us into those shadowy, unknown waters, going into some nooks and crannies and some depths that we might have thought we have traversed before, but we really hadn't, and really, truly going there and being down there as long as we need and receiving whatever teachings we need before we come gradually back up to the surface, where then the light starts to come from going down into the dark depths and the shadows. And so whale is a powerful teacher also of sacred sound. If you ever want to just sit in power animal medicine, turn on a YouTube video of whale songs, and just sit for a couple of minutes at the bare minimum and just listen to, there's no creature that makes the noises and the sounds that a whale makes. And no one's been able to decode it. Like, no scientists and all their years of studying, they can't understand these mystical wails and sounds of the whale. It's incredible. I love those two so much.
Well, let's talk more about the birthing of this book, because it wasn't kind of the path didn't follow along as it was presented, perhaps.
No, none of it was what I thought it would be. Even back to when I was aligned with my calling, and then we know how it works. When you get aligned with your truth and your earth mission, then things start to really gracefully and more synchronistically happen for you. And so I started to be reached out to by literary agents and publishers. I was taking all these meetings. Again, this is when I was living in New York. So countless meetings with all these really incredible people in these industries. And I could not get clear on what the book was. This went on for 3+ years, I think somewhere around 3.5, 4 years. And so out of the gate, the whole book journey was completely opposite of what I thought it would be, because I've always been a writer. Ever since I was a little kid, I always knew I would be an author, and writing's always come pretty easy and naturally for me. It's a skill that I was given. And so, you can imagine then, circulating around for 3+ years and never getting clear. That I trusted, but at times was frustrating. And then I finally got clear on the book, got clear on who I wanted my agents to be. And in that clarity, that's how I got clear on the book and meeting with them and a more in-depth talk. And so I flew to Bali to write the book. And in my first morning meditation, The second I closed my eyes, now, mind you, I had been working diligently daily with the power animal guides for many, many years at this point, and we had developed already a deep trust that went both ways. Them trusting me to be a voice for them. I was already guiding thousands of people on guided shamanic journeys to meet their animals. So they, and I trusted them to show up for me when I would be doing live readings. And so we had a deep relationship at this point. But I closed my eyes for the morning meditation. And as soon as I did, power animals as far as the mind's eye could see. I mean, hundreds or thousands of them all entered in together. They all just came in and they had a message for me. And that message was, that cute little book that you think you came all the way across the world to Bali to write, you're not writing that book. I thought I was writing a book on surrender. And I had to surrender that idea and let that one go out the window. And they said, we want you to co-create a modern day power animal guidebook with us. And it was one of those moments when the instruction came in, it was like, dude, the biggest duh moment, because I'm like, oh my God, of course it's this. They were the first spiritual allies to come in to help me. I've been working with them every day for so many years. How did I not think of that? So I messaged my agent, said, I live by the calls, so I hope you're on board, but I'm no longer writing a book on surrender. The animals have requested that we do a dance together, and they love the idea, thankfully. So then changed course again. And then I worked on the book for many years, probably from the time I started to work on it till the time it came out, it was probably 4 or 5 years.
Jeez.
So, it was a long game, long haul. And then especially when I got to actually writing it, my intention was that it be a pure, living, divine, breathing medicine book that would serve everyone's highest, greatest earthly good who would open their hearts and want to receive the book in, that it would provide the exact dosing type of medicine, whatever transmission that was meant for their highest, greatest earthly good. I just wanted it to be a pure divine entity of a being. And so you can imagine when that's the foundational intention for then what you are going to write and crystallize and allowed to take shape into physical form so that it can come from this vision into a tangible earthly piece that sits on a table. Boy, it was a big intention to set. And I'm so glad I did, because the power of how it works with me and the stories I'm already hearing of what it's doing, it's exactly what my heart wanted. But it brought with it just so, oh my gosh, so much. I mean, number one, it's a book that shares and teaches about shamanism. And there's just, case in point, even the lady who doesn't like me, who doesn't know me. There's a lot of sensitivities and confusion and misperceptions and misconceptions around who shamans are and what shamanism is. And I couldn't just skip over that. So I had to, just writing the author's note alone, those few pages at the beginning of the book before we even get into the power animals, the author's note was by far the most initiatory thing I've ever written in my life. And Luke and I happened to be in Sedona at the time. So I was in Sedona. That place was already throwing me around its copper healing crystal bowl and trying to spit me out. It was not a real enjoyable place for me. So I was already trying to navigate that while writing the author's note for this living medicine book. And it just, oh God, yeah, because I'm not the only one that's being asked to do this, but one of the tasks that I have been given is to help be a returner of shamanism back to what it really is, back to its original truths. And that's a big responsibility, and one I absolutely don't take lightly, and one that I really didn't want to have to say yes to. And I resisted that task for a long time, being an educator in the space. Two very different things when you're a ceremonialist. And like when I was in New York City guiding, tons of people in shamanic journeys, that's one thing. But then when you're asked by spirit to be an educator of shamanism, that's a whole other ballgame. So yeah, this book, they're just, again, I honor the human in me, and I'm not trying to say that I don't fumble at times, but what I choose in walking this path is to do it with the best embodiment, the healthiest embodiment and integrity that I possibly can. And when you have the intention for the book that I did, and when you choose to walk the spiritual path and the shamanic path in the way that I choose to, the best that I can, there can't be any crap in the book. There can't be any words or energetics or anything that I'm not in alignment with, that aren't of divine truth. And so this book, it just took me into so many wild, hard places. And the other place I give myself a lot of credit for is I held the line on what I knew this book needed to be and what I was told this book needed to be. I love my publisher. You know, they've been great to work with, and I can't imagine a greater final product and outcome. So I'm so happy to have voyaged with them. It was a shamanic journey for all of us involved this whole way, let me tell you. But, you know, they have their own expertise and viewpoints and perspectives. And then I have mine, and I have my divine instructions. So I had to hold such a strong, clear line, even when, hey, you know, we think this, or we think this should be removed, or do you really, even something small like, do you really think tick should be in the book? A lot of people have an aversion to tick. And I'm like, we don't run away from what we have an aversion to in shamanism. Like, we lean in. Why is there an aversion? And so there was just countless times where there was a dance, and I don't want to label things as a battle, but there were times where I had to muster the grandest, strongest force and strength within me to hold the line for this book to end up being exactly what it is. And it was not an easy feat at all. And then it was supposed to be out in October, and found out it was pushed 6 months back to March. It was stuck on boats and other places around the world. So when I thought I was about to birth this book out, then I realized what I thought I needed to then pull it back in me and hold it back in. And then, as your wife, who's such a dear, close friend of mine, such a beautiful, wise sister and soul and doula, reminded me so lovingly during a cacao ceremony with just myself and 3 other friends one day, she was like, honey, that is not how births work. You can't pull the baby back in. We got to get this sucker out there. And so that ended up taking us, in that cacao sipping, you know, just girls hang day, turned into this whole powerful shamanic birthing. Like, I was literally on the floor. Your wife was at, you know, I had my sweatpants on, but she was at my, you know, vagina and was helping me. I was like breathing, and it was a real thing that was happening. I was really letting myself energetically allow Animal Power Book to be born. And I could feel it moving through me. I could feel it moving through the birth canal. I could feel when I needed Peyton's guidance, and I asked for her to come in with her hands and to help. The book needed a little pivoting, and she helped guide Animal Power Book out of my sacred vessel, out of my vagina, energetically into the world. And in the meantime, another friend's dog knocked my cacao over, and it looked like afterbirth was spilled all over me. I had cacao all over my pants. And then my other friend is singing these like shamanic sacred songs. It was a whole scene, and unplanned, but it was what needed to happen. So that happened. I mean, I could literally go on for days what happened writing this book.
How did you feel after that birth, and in the moments, the days after? Did you feel that you had moved it enough?
I felt a shift, and I knew that was what needed to happen, and it was absolutely the right thing. But it was still such a dance. Because yes, I had birthed it energetically, so there was a form of it birthing, but there was still this other form that still had to be held by me, because it wasn't in people's hands yet. You know, people that had ordered it, you know, last June. They're waiting almost a year to get it. So it's like even something small of like people DMing or emailing or asking like, well, I ordered this book, last April. Where is it? The fact that it just physically wasn't on the bookshelves yet and wasn't in people's hands. So there was still this other aspect of the birth that I still had to carry and hold that was a bit challenging. And what's recent that happened, as I thought after the Animal Power book release party that you all were at here in Austin, I thought that the day after I would feel like a huge weight lifted. I thought I would feel this massive sense of landedness, if that's a word, and completion. And I didn't. The next day, I felt so on edge and like testy and a bit out of sorts. And Luke and I were running errands, and I remember saying to him, and he's so great. He's just, I can't even imagine a better partner. And he holds such impeccable space for me in all of my forms, even when Kali is coming in, and he's so great at it. But I said, honey, I never like to apologize for my feelings because I accept and embrace them all. But I just said, I'm aware that I'm just on edge, and I apologize for that because I thought that today would be a bit more liberated and free and celebratory, and I'm not there. And it took me half the day as we were running errands around. We were in a parking lot, and when he drove the car over one of the little speed bumps in the parking lot, for some reason, when the car hit down on that bump, the download of clarity came in and it hit me, and I was like, I'm feeling vulnerable.
Oh, because now people have it.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming.
Oh, yeah.
Now people have it, and my soul has been, bared fully in the most ancient and all-encompassing ways in this book. And now that I know that it's being delivered to people's doorsteps, and all the people that came to the book party left with a copy, and now it's in people's hands, I was feeling so vulnerable with that. And also, it was a beautiful teaching of me letting myself expand and receiving more love. And learning how to let it in, and learning that I can trust myself to hold even more than ever before. Mm-hmm. And so I was aware even before you guys started to arrive at the party, as we were setting up and I was there at Alive and Well, I knew, and I was even saying, I think to Luke or somebody, I'm like, I need to let myself be celebrated, because it's very easy for me as the quote unquote healer or shaman. It's like, and a seer, I can see what other people's shadows are, their neuroses. I can see what they need for healing. So my natural state and inclination is to go to someone and provide relief or whatever to make someone else feel better. And I was like, I need to sit here and I need to let myself receive what I typically give. And I need to let myself be celebrated. And I need to let this night be about me. I need to let this night be about me. And it's a foreign enough aspect that I had to say this out loud so that I could be present to that the best that I could. So it was vulnerability in terms of growing and capacity to receive and hold love, and vulnerability and my soul being bared, and now people have it in their hands. Last part is just yesterday, Luke and I went for the first time to a physical store to see if Animal Power book was there. And so that was my first experience. We went to the Barnes and Noble over here, and sure enough, there she sat by one of Joe Dispenza's books on the shelf, and so again, these are all examples. This book journey is always taking me away in a place that I never expected. It was going to the bookstore. That is what gave me, when we drove away from the bookstore after seeing it there, that's when I felt everything was landed. And that's when I felt the weight lifted off my shoulder. And that's when I felt the sense of completion. And I never would have guessed that. So it has just been the wildest, most beautiful, all-encompassing voyage of my career, hands down, by far.
And there's so much more with this book too that's coming. What did it feel like when you saw it at Barnes and Noble?
It felt, oh gosh, how did it, oh boy, let me see how it felt. These are really basic words. They're not like profound ones coming in, but the first two, it felt real and it felt right. Felt real and it felt right. But let me see. I feel like there's one other thing. When I sat there on the floor and pulled Animal Power book from the bookshelf at Barnes and Noble, and I'm sitting there holding that book in my hand, it felt astounding is coming in, and it felt, okay, hang on, it's centering. I felt honored because I really know that this book was a co-creative effort. You know, I obviously could never have done it without Great Spirit and Great Mother Earth giving me guidance, anchoring me, sustaining me to hold the line. Obviously couldn't have done it without the power animals, without William, the artist who passed away. Like, so it's an absolute co-creation in so many ways. And it just felt like such an honor to be a part of bringing out into this earth realm, into this earth plane, something that really holds within it just such a pure divine medicine and essence that I know will live so far beyond what I live on this earth. Like, to feel like I made a real substantial divine contribution to the earth plane. And that kind of form is different. It's different than guiding a ceremony. It's different. It's a different texture and energetic. So it felt like a huge honor. That's what it felt like.
That's awesome. And I've heard you talk about this before, but you've said this isn't your book because it was divinely channeled, but it is your book.
It is my book.
And I love the idea that it doesn't have to be one thing or the other. It can be both.
Yes.
And I think, yeah, just honoring all that went into this for you. You know, all the blood, and I imagine there's a little blood, but the sweat, the tears, all the anxiety, all the hours, and all the work you've done in this lifetime and previous to be able to birth that.
Thank you. I hear you and I receive that. And I also acknowledge what you said fully. Yeah, I can feel the past lives that helped lead me here. Yeah, to say yes, you know, and that's another interesting thing. I mean, I've heard a lot of stories already. I mean, people, even as they're opening it out of the box or the envelope, a lot of people are getting blasted open and crying upon just first glance or just really trippy, amazing animal stories and just how the book is already weaving with them. So I know the potency, but another interesting thing is, you know, it can be like, oh, it's animals and it's colorful and it's vibrant. And I wanted the book to resonate both with adults in a really like chic, classy way, but also I wanted kids to like it. And so to be able to witness that happening too. But there was a reason why I was going into how at first glance, it might be, because I'm looking at it sitting here on Cal's table. At first glance, it could just look like a cool or pretty, you know, fun book. But yeah, to say yes to that instruction, it was a big task that took a lot. And I definitely crashed when the final manuscript was turned in. I've never, not even in my most intense athletic days, I've never known exhaustion like I knew when that final manuscript got sent. I really pretty much collapsed. And then I asked why. I'm like, oh my gosh, didn't see this coming either. Round number 500 of that. Why am I feeling so exhausted? And it took me to everything that we've been talking about, the the line that I had to so strongly, impeccably hold, and the space that I had to hold in order for that to come out. I was like, oh, that makes sense. I'm freaking tired. So I've been resting and recharging, and just only recently been taking like little step when I feel called to kind of step out with different offerings. But I've been really having to learn my divine feminine and learning how to just be like you.
Yeah, you and me both.
Yeah.
The book, it's beautiful. The illustrations by William are amazing, and it is just very approachable. It sits beautifully on a coffee table or on your bookshelf. And so someone could just very unsuspectingly pick it up. Oh, let's look. Is this a book of pictures? Like what is, or illustrations? And all of a sudden it's like, boom, they just drop into something they did not see coming.
And it's really well, I don't know if I would label it microcosm, but that's kind of how I am too.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm friendly and I'm approachable, and I used to be an athlete and a hip hop morning show host. I mean, I'm a shaman in a lot of both traditional and modern ways. And so I've got a big smile I'm very approachable.
You have an amazing smile. That's so good.
Thanks, Cal. Or thanks to my ancestors, whoever gave it to me. Whatever. But yeah, it's the same kind of dance a lot of times with me. You know, people on the surface might be like, you know, again, back to the lady at the dinner party, you might be like, oh, whatever she said, you know, I'm not putting words in her mouth, but whatever other people might say, like either what a joke, or she's like a pop culture-y or a surface level shaman. Cause you know, maybe that's what it looks like, but that's absolutely not the case. So
I'm still blown away by rock star. God, that's so good.
Yeah.
Okay, one last question before we wrap.
Okay.
How did you, and maybe you didn't select, but how were the other contributors to the book brought onto the project?
Oh, I love that question. Yeah, I haven't really talked about that too much. Yeah, so I'm trying to remember. I don't have a clear, detailed memory. I just recall just always having a knowingness that I wanted to involve other friends and shamanic colleagues of mine. I wanted it to be a vessel that housed people's teachings who I trust and their transmissions and embodiment. So, yeah, I really just tuned in. I remember just meditating a lot, and similar. It's honestly not that different than what we're talking about in terms of podcast guests. I just would tune in and meditate, and it took me on a really beautiful voyage. There are some shamanic teachers and people in there that I've actually never met in person, but I was guided to them. And I knew of them and I could feel their embodiment. And then when I reached out and said, you know, I know we might just follow each other on Instagram. And I would say, I know we've never met in person, but I'm working on this animal power book. You know, if it resonates, I'm asking, you know, about 25 different contributors from all around the world, different traditions and teachings to share, you know, do you happen to have, and every time, like, do you happen to have, they would come back with, I have, like, oh, this animal totally changed my life. And so I was just impeccably divinely guided. But there was a funny situation at the end where I was technically past the final deadline date for being able to turn in the final manuscript. So, it was going to print, I think. Yeah, it was going off to print. And initiation number 12,000, so there were some stories, some contributors, a couple contributors, it just was not meant for them, and it was not meant for their energetics to be in the book. And it was past the final deadline date to make this change, but it absolutely had to be done, had to be done. And oh my God. And that's like, that's the schism point of like, when I get this clarity that something has to happen, yet I'm being told just from like an earth-based, like business, whatever, level, like that's not possible. And then that thing's hitting up against the thing that I know has to change. It creates such an intense, situation inside my own being. And so I said like this absolutely, like we have to find a way. And so thank God they said, if you can, by the end of today, like come up with a macaw story. It had to be macaw and snake too. Like it had to be those, just the layout of the book. It couldn't be any other animals. It had to be those two. And I had to get it done that day. And I tuned in and I happened to text our friend Shiva Rose. And I said, Shiva, my God, sister,
No.
I have got an emergency book situation. Do you happen to have any connection to the macaw? And thank God, not only did she text me back like in real time right away, but she texted back and she said, this is the weirdest thing. I have wild stories with macaws. My family, they were refugees from Iran. And when they got over here, their family owned macaws, and she had these like really wild, tumultuous relationships with these macaws. And one day she ingested mushrooms, and the relationship was able to shift. She was able to telepathically communicate with the macaw and realized the macaw wanted to be set free. And she like set this macaw free. And there's other details to the story, but it's one of my favorites in the book. It's a really powerful, liberating story. So she came in with the macaw, and then Boyd Vardy, who I've is a close friend of both of ours. I've also had him on my Ceremony Circle podcast. He was in town staying here at your house. And when I think I texted or I came over here.
You happened to be here like that day or something.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah. And I was like, Boyd, do you happen to have a snake story? And he's like, well, only the time a black mamba slithered on my body for 5 minutes in the African bush with my father, and he bit a hole in his cheek because he thought it was going to kill both of us. And I was like, can you write it for me today? And he's like, are you serious? I'm like, today. So I love to give honor and props and good shout outs to both Boyd Vardy and Shiva Rose. Of course, to all the contributors. They added such, additional depth and texture and enrichment to the book. But those two were like my angels that came in the beyond ninth inning to save the day. So yeah, it was, there's incredible stories in there.
Oh, so good. Okay. So where can people find the book? How can they work with you? Where can they find you? You've got the accompanying deck coming out in August.
Yes, you guys have one laying around here somewhere. Yes, Animal Power deck comes out August 16th. And I most recommend getting Animal Power book by going to my website, which is AlysonCharles.com. And I spell Alyson, Alyson. Because if you go to the Animal Power book page on my website, you will then get sent a free video guided shamanic journey that I facilitate with my drum. And you will meet the power animal who is wanting to come in to support you at this time. So it's a cool thing to have. And then you can obviously reference the animal in the book. You can also get it anywhere books are sold. I know a lot of people love to go to the independent bookstores or Amazon, wherever. And then Instagram, I am Alyson Charles. And then my podcast, Ceremony Circle Podcast. It's a good time over there. We close every episode with the guest sharing like a healing ritual. And so the listener gets to actually immerse in a healing practice at the end of every episode if they want to. So.
Well, I noticed you brought some
I did.
Tools of the trade with you.
I did. You never know. And I also, know Peyton. I mean, you guys both have drums. I was hitting yours in here in the beginning, and I love Peyton's drums. So something just in case. I was like, bring your dolphin rattle and bring your drum in case something gets evoked. So yeah.
Do you feel called to it? And it's okay if no?
Yeah. I mean, the rattle's actually calling me more than the drum. Let's see. With your permission, I'd like to see if there's any power animal that wants to come in and has a message for you.
I totally forgot to. Yeah, let's see.
Would you like to do that?
Yes.
Okay, I have Cal's permission. You heard it here. All right, I'm going to tune in. So I just always make sure, I always start my day connecting and anchoring in with honor to Great Mother Earth, and then connecting into the divine center of my being, tuning in to my heart, and then lifting that line up into the center point of source consciousness, divine, honoring and thanking Great Spirit. But I'm just reattuning to that vertical line now. And then calling forward if there's any power animal who wishes to make themselves known for Cal's highest, greatest earthly good. We are open to receive you and your message now. Gosh, there's a whole fleet. You have a whole power animal army coming in, a bunch. But I think there's one main one that's still trying to make its way in. So far, butterfly and penguin revealed. Butterfly for your transformation, penguin for the balance you're trying to feel. But I feel there's another one trying to come in. Stand by. Interesting. Turtle just appeared. Let's see why our turtle friend came in. Okay, it's honoring you. I always love when these readings happen because they typically tend to either be a power animal that comes in with like a specific message or a piece of advice, or what is happening today is when a power animal comes in a bow, a sacred bow to a person. And that, yeah, I know I'm feeling emotional over it too. So the turtle is coming in just thanking you for allowing yourself to get more truly and deeply reconnected back to the most ancient truths that live inside of you, and allowing yourself to get grounded back into those most ancient truths. It's thanking you for doing this work you're doing and honoring, affirming, and giving a bow to you and doing that work. And she just said, she reminded me, she said, I represent the Great Mother. Your work is seen, it's felt, it's valued. Your inner work. Good work. I see you allowing it into all the lines. That's how it's done, Cal. So ready, so doing it. You can take that turtle shell off your heart. You don't have to protect it anymore. Our last instruction for you is to put music on and go out in your backyard barefoot, like tribal, ancient, shamanic music. Just barefoot, just let your feet stomp and connect with Great Mother, and even further, activate those transmissions and remember that ancient soul that danced on the dirt, that danced on the red dirt.
Thank you for being here. I just love you and adore you. And I'm so grateful that you're in my life and our family's life, and for all the work you're doing. So thank you.
Receive and thank you. I adore your whole family and love you so much too. I see you, brother. I really do. I see your soul. I see your heart. And just thank you for welcoming Luke and I into your home and into your family. And, we treasure our relationships with you guys so much. And we love you so much. We just say all the time, just randomly, like, it's just, Cal and Peyton, we just feel randomly one or the other just on a regular basis. But like, how much do we love Cal and Peyton? Yeah. It's a regular conversation in our home. So we love you guys. Thank you for having me and seeing me too. And for just speaking my honor in your experience of me, and holding the line for me in a room where I wasn't there. Thank you for doing that for me.
It's my pleasure.